Recording this meeting, so we can go ahead and get started. Most of you know me by now. My name is Allison Bowles. I'm the Education and Community Programming Manager for La Jolla Music Society. We're so happy to have you here at our second webinar encounter. Today we'll be exploring the impact of COVID-19 on the arts. As we begin, please note, participants, that your audio has been muted and your video has been turned off. This will help make sure the discussion goes smoothly and help us avoid having people talk over one another. It also preserves your anonymity as we begin this recording. Most importantly, it will allow us to hear our panelists clearly. Unlike other webinars that we've done so far this SummerFest, we're going to be taking questions throughout this conversation. And I'll explain how you can participate in just a moment. The reason for this is because really we're all in this together. Artists, managers, arts administrators, audience, all of us are really part of this arts ecosystem, and we want you to feel like you're a part of this panel as well. So please don't be shy and join in the conversation. You'll be able to participate, as I mentioned, in a few different ways. You can type a chat or a Q&A at any time with your questions and comments. And many of you may be familiar with this, but let's go through kind of in a little bit more detail. These buttons, the chat and Q&A, will either be at the top center or bottom center of your screen, depending on which view of Zoom you're using. If you don't see those buttons, please click the More button in the toolbar, and you can select chat from that area. You can send through the chat either a message to all panelists and attendees. This is for public comment, or you can select the down arrow and click all panelists if you'd like your comment to remain private. Also, if you use the Q&A function, you can remain completely anonymous if you'd like to do that instead. If you'd rather talk directly to the group, this is something new for us. You can press the raise hand button and we'll be able to give you permission to unmute your audio and speak directly to our artists and the rest of the group here. We're joined, as you can see on screen, by Leah Rosenthal, our artistic director here at La Jolla Music Society, and she's gonna help us monitor the chat, the Q&A, and look out for raised hands. So let's take a moment and make sure that the chat is up and running, and we'll be asking you questions throughout. So for now, if you could please share your most memorable music experience since stay-at-home began. Go ahead and share that in the chat. And while you do that, I wanted to share about our LJMS Artist Cares Fund. This is a new fund that we've launched in response to the pandemic to provide support to over 80 SummerFest artists who were not able to join us at this year's festival. I hope you consider supporting today by making a donation. And you can visit ljms.org to find that Artist Cares. All right, it looks like the chat is slowly starting. Please don't be shy. Chime on in. I will take a moment to introduce our panel before we really dive in. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with our artists and have seen them in concert and open rehearsals that we've already had this year. I'm delighted to welcome violist and violinist Yura Lee, cellist Alisa Weilerstein, violinist James Ehnes, and cellist Clive Greensmith. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other a little more clearly, and we can really dive right in. I thought maybe we could start by just sharing where we were at the start of the stay at home. James, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm not muted, right?
Correct.
Well, my last concert before all of this blew up was March 1st in Barcelona. And I was actually staying with some really good friends there. My whole family was with me. I mean, my wife and kids. And every day we were watching the news and saying, boy, good thing it hasn't come to Spain. And it was, I think, 2 days after we left that our friends got in touch and said, you got out just in time. And they ended up basically being stuck in their apartment for 7 weeks or something amazing like that. So I went home, and of course things were definitely starting to happen then. But I think that many musicians, at least in North America, remember the day as March 12th. Which was a Thursday. I was rehearsing with my quartet, and at 9 in the morning, we were in New York City. It was, say, 9:30 we were rehearsing. 10 a.m. the weekend's concerts were canceled. 10:30 I was on my way to Newark Airport, and by like 1 in the afternoon I was home in Florida, and then I didn't leave until, I suppose it was late June. And the first thing I did in late June was rehearsals with my quartet. So it was quite an amazing thing. It felt almost as if those months in between just kind of disappeared, because the last thing I'd been doing was then the first thing I was doing afterwards. And in my case, there was no one in my house. I mean, my kids are tiny. They play music a little, but I mean, I didn't play any music with anybody. Some of my friends or colleagues, either within their household or within their chosen pod or whatever, that they had people that they could play music with. But music for me for those several months was an entirely solitary experience, and that was very strange, and has made situations like this particularly poignant and very special.
Alisa, do you want to tell us about where you were?
Sure. My husband and daughter, the three of us, we live in Berlin as well as in San Diego, and we were actually in Europe. We were each playing concerts in Europe, kind of that last week in March. Let's say between the 6th and the 12th. That was the week that I feel like I lost 10 years of my life just trying to figure out where we were going to, because in Germany, it wasn't quite as soon as, we went into lockdown a little bit later than Italy and Spain did, but one could see the writing on the wall. I mean, there was like this really dark cloud looming over everyone, and Merkel was beginning to really speak honestly with the public at that point. And we made the decision actually to come to San Diego. And we were going to come to North America. We each had a period starting like around March 25th or so. I mean, I was about to go on tour to Paris and to London. And of course, all of this, all of the dates just started falling off, one by one, and sometimes, several at a time. And so we just basically packed our bags and came in on March 13th. So just in time for the travel ban to go into effect. And there was no social distancing in the immigration line at LA. I mean, we stood in that line for 4 hours after a 15-hour trip with a 4-year-old. So that was a little tough, as you could imagine. And so, but yeah, so then we were in San Diego from March 13th. And then my first engagement that was not basically recording from my house was actually in Hamburg. So I quarantined for 2 weeks in Germany. On June 1st, I flew from LA again via Newark to Frankfurt. I got tested upon arrival, and then did the 2 weeks in Berlin in my apartment, and then played a live broadcast in Hamburg with the NDR Philharmonic Orchestra, and then flew back to San Diego. And so this is, and Inan and I of course did a virtual recital for Aspen and the Conrad actually about a month ago, but we were both talking about just how, for so many reasons, how much we were looking forward to our, the reimagined SummerFest, that we were going to make music with friends. And, just playing by yourself gets very old after a while. And, even though, of course, we miss our full audience, even having each other to play for on stage is something that's so powerful and so special. So. I'm just echoing what you said now. I mean, I'm just so happy to be making music with friends and with great colleagues.
You mentioned that there would be those days where you wake up in the morning and I think both of our managers are overseas.
Yes.
So it's like, you know how it is. You wake up in the morning to see what the bad news of the day is. And and I mean, it still happens. I woke up to a couple more cancellations today. Yeah. Great. But there was
the ripple effect.
This friend of mine, I think a lot of people sign up for, I think you can get it through dictionary.com or Merriam-Webster, wherever, but the word of the day. And I remember it was, I think back in May, that another musician friend of mine said, hey, guess what the word of the day is today? It's force majeure. And it's like, that's the word of every day.
I never want to hear this
that's
again
been the word
of
the last 5 months.
Yeah, totally. So
it's too much. For anyone who's not used to reading artist contracts, the force majeure, of course, is kind of the clause that in case the world erupts and pandemic strikes and catastrophe is happening, which we've all been through, then of course we have the ability to cancel, unfortunately, for everyone involved.
Well, and just to that end, I mean, of course I can believe it now because we're now, unfortunately, we're used to this, more or less. The ripple effects of this, it's not just the immediate cancellations, it's how it spreads into next season. It spreads into how tours are being planned, how orchestras are reimagining their seasons, the repertoire changes. It's every single little aspect, which, one wouldn't think of immediately, but it's just, we're going to be feeling the ripple effects of this for a long time.
It's so true. Yeah, and maybe, Leah, you can chat a little bit about that. I do want Yura and Clive to be able to share their first experience kind of transitioning into lockdown, but maybe we can come back to that topic.
No, I agree with Alisa. I mean, the issue that we're facing now is that we're promising, or we're trying to reschedule, not only now from performance that may or may not cancel in this coming season, but from 1920 as well. And so some musicians will be out of work for 3 seasons because there's no room left on a season. So you're basically, you keep trying to save or move forward what you've done in the years past. And so it's really locking some people out of certain markets as well for a long time. And yeah, so it continues to snowball. And so I think it's something, even when the halls open up and we can get back in, it's going to be something that I think musicians, even more than the audience, are going to feel for a longer term. So it's just, it's tough.
Yura, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you were at the start of this and where you've been since?
I guess coronavirus officially started, December or January now is the latest news. So, we were doing our normal touring, and I had a home in LA, Portland, and New York, and now just in Portland since COVID. But so I was teaching in LA, touring, I spent half the time, I think, in Europe, or I used to rather. And I remember my last concert before all this, should I say, erupted, was in Arizona. And I was playing there with friends from UK and other places, and we're like, oh yeah, this is fun, let's go get tacos, after concert hang. And then I come home, and then just series of and home in LA. And I remember my last day of classes before the spring break with the students, and as the students were just about to have a break, every one of my spring things basically canceled. And then the summer things canceled a few weeks or months later. And then even next April, things canceled because I was supposed to tour in Europe, and I'm coming from America. And although I'm not American, the quarantine and travel ban and all that. So on April 15th, I adopted a dog. That's something that I wanted to do for my whole life. And I could never get a dog because I was traveling, I was literally on flights 4 or 5 times a day. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I did do that to myself for 26 years and counting. And I finally got a dog, and I have never known such joy and such I can't imagine loving this creature more every day and then I do the next day, and he just looks cuter. So to all mothers out there, Alisa, Leah, Allison, I don't okay. Well, I don't know how you guys do it because it's a dog and I miss it every hour. So if you're going on a trip with a child at home, I cannot even imagine. But with the pandemic now, I have things canceled for, basically 2 years now. So I'm thinking if I could just have like 3 kids now and then have it all grow up and pass the terrible twos and then start touring again. But, it doesn't work like that, right? But
Yura, my fur baby, my first love, he's 14 years old, is a Shih Tzu named Johann Sebastian Bark. And he is, yes, I know, I'm a nerd. But he is, even with 2 children, he is the love of my life as well as my kids. And a love and having a dog changes you for the better, or any pet.
I eat junk food and I'll boil chicken breast for my dog. I mean, it's gone all backwards. But yeah, I'm actually glad to have had a hard stop to something that I, always put off, like, oh, the next year. I'm a planner, so I put it in my calendar when I'm 35 now, but when I turned like 31, I wrote in my calendar like September 1st, baby, ? And of course that's 4 years ago, and I've just gotten to know a bigger joy than anything else so I'm actually grateful, but of course at the same time my identity is very adjoined with being a musician. So it's been a kind of a identity searching as well as income searching. But I'm glad to have finally seeing my life from a different facet now, because somebody had to force me to do it. And I'm glad the whole world is doing it with me, because then I don't feel so alone. Well, most of the world, a lot of European countries are apparently going back to normal, but most of my colleagues here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Clive, what about you? Any new pets, any new children?
Not that I'm aware of, for the latter, I hope. Dog-wise, my lovely boy Nino he's 14, and he's been having some problems with his hind legs, so walks have been a little bit curtailed recently, but he's doing well. It's been lovely, actually. Yeah, I've been really enjoying spending time with him. Dog that was brought into the family 14 years ago, he would barely recognize me when I came home, along with my daughter. Anyway, my last concert, I think, was on March 10th with the Miro Quartet. We were playing at West Palm Beach. Arno Sussman is the director there. And in fact, in a fit of amazing symmetry, the last piece I played was the Schubert Cello Quintet, which is the first piece I played in a sort of quasi-live concert here with my wonderful colleagues here, with Alisa as my companion cellist. I was playing second cello with the Miros, so I had to there was a bit of a post-quarantine fog in my brain. I kept forgetting to come in or play the wrong part, because I played both parts quite often, which is interesting to bookmark my quarantine with 2 performances of the Schubert Cello Quintet. But in between, it was that mad schedule that we're all consumed by. We're rushing from one thing to another. I think the first I heard of the Wuhan virus was when I was with Wuhan, the pianist, at the airport in Atlanta on a Chamber Music Society tour at the end of January. And she said, "Wow, I'm famous. I keep reading my name in the newspaper." And of course, it was the province Wuhan, and it was the first news of COVID-19, the coronavirus. And then I didn't think much more about it. And then, of course, the news became more and more obvious. And I was supposed to play with my trio in Italy, and we were going to I was going to fly from West Palm Beach to Newark, and Newark to Milan, hire the car and drive to Lombardia, which of course was the cradle of the outbreak in northern Italy, which wasn't very strategic, I must say. So we had to cancel that, and it was going to be an absolutely jam-packed spring. I was going to race back from that and then play at the Piatigorsky Cello Festival in Los Angeles. That was canceled, and I found out about that. I'll never forget that day. My colleague called me from LA and said it's not happening. And so then I went home, and I stayed home until coming here to La Jolla last week. So I went straight home and took my breath, and then started teaching all my students and finishing up the spring semester, which extended all the way into July and August. We just kept teaching. And I did some at-home projects and tried to learn some new repertoire, loads of new Bach suite, and tried to make myself busy around the home and gain some quarantine pounds. Probably drank a little too much, read a few books, but most of all tried to spend time with my family, which was great. And that was the first time for me being at home for any stretch of time since I was probably in my late 20s. So it had been over 20 years of mad jet setting and just going from one thing to another.
Yeah, it was just strange to like finish a tube of toothpaste at home, like from start to finish. Like, I mean, I know this sounds so stupid, but like I've never done that. I just like, I finish shampoo bottles now. How great.
That is so bizarre. Wow, that is, I think, a lifestyle that probably few of us on the chat here can relate to. I don't know. That's, yeah, I never would have thought of that.
We do have a question from Janet White, who writes, what are creative ways are you finding to perform live? And are there any particular performances that are going to go ahead that are innovative or that are able to actually happen? If anyone has a project or something that they're involved in that they want to talk about.
Well, as you know, Leah, I had a tricky situation with the timing of this festival here, and then the Montreal Symphony Orchestra is opening their season on September 12th and 13th, I believe, are the concert days, and it was unclear as to whether they were going to do this for a while, but they have found a way to proceed with that, and I had been booked for that. So, I mean, that's something that I don't think many people outside the music world have considered, is that with quarantines and with travel restrictions, on the one hand, you know, sort of freelance musicians are dealing with far less work than ever before. But then on the other, you run into these situations where you are lucky enough to have some work, and then you realize that governmental restrictions mean that maybe the only two things you've had for a while are in direct conflict with one another. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm leaving on a flight tonight after the performance so that I can be in Canada by tomorrow night in quarantine, so that I can come out of quarantine just in time to play one rehearsal with the orchestra to start the season. And I believe that the restrictions in Quebec allow for, I think it's around 350 people in the hall, which is probably about a 2,000 seat hall. And I don't know whether that number is sort of an absolute number in terms of gathering size, or whether it's based on a proportion of the seats in the venue. But I am excited to do that. I mean, to play music with a sort of substantially sized live audience will be novel, and also, I mean, it's kind of a poignant thing, because this is, of course, the big Beethoven year, the 250th anniversary, and I was going to be playing 35 performances of Beethoven concerto or something, and now this is the only one. so I better make it count.
Yeah. No, I have something similar actually, where we play the gala on the 30th, and we are out of here on the 31st because I have a week in Switzerland. To get to Germany, I can test 48 hours within a 48-hour period before landing, and then we don't have to quarantine. But Switzerland requires a 10-day period if you're coming from the United States. If you're coming from Europe, you don't need it. But if you're coming from the United States, you do. So we'll arrive, of course, September 1st. And we're arriving just in time for me to be able to actually travel to Switzerland, play the rehearsal, and then be able to play 3 concerts, actually. These are audiences of 800, which I was shocked by that it's that much. But it's, yeah, that's a sensation that I don't think any of us has known since March, to actually play for an audience of hundreds, which would have been a very small audience for an orchestral concert before. But now the prospect of this is just suddenly very, very exciting. So
Do you feel any apprehension returning to a live audience, or is it just excitement?
no, not personally. I know we all feel differently about it, but no, I'm profoundly grateful and excited for that.
I'm curious, you all mentioned this wonderful opportunity to reconnect with your families and to feel a sense of normalcy that a lot of times you can't experience as a musician that's always on the road. But I'm curious, creatively, how were you sort of less inspired to practice or play, or how were you all of a sudden able to compose or do, explore other areas of your artistic potential? I'm curious whether it sort of shut down where you felt a little numb and it really was just, let's just focus on family and some of these other things.
I might be kind of an anomaly here, but I stopped playing completely from, the entirety of COVID until a few days before La Jolla, actually. And the reason for that was I wanted to experience what it's like to reset my whole body, because, violin and viola is a little bit, to say the least, very unnatural of a thing. And I wanted to just let my body go back to what it should be normally. And I've never known that because we're doing repetitive movements. And I also wanted to find myself in a way that is non-musical. And I think the anomaly might be a little bit of this, is that I'm realizing I have my musical identity, which is something that I'm very steeped in, but whatever emptiness that I feel is not, that comes from being so full with music, has to be filled in other ways as well in my life. And it's not for everyone, but for me, I have to have the good balance of that. So I actually felt more creative not playing, because then I was able to find my own creativity, kind of unrelated to anything that I had to do professionally, musically speaking, that is. And even now when I practice, I enjoy it even more than ever. So I find that maybe performance for me is a side effect of my musicianship, and I get to share it when it's ready. Hopefully that it is ready, but I will be a musician no matter where, no matter if the pandemic kills this industry or not. I'm going to play music whether it makes money or not. It's just who I'm gonna be for the rest of my life, and it's very nice to know that with times like this, because it's also nice not to depend on, for me personally, depend on external factors for me to feel creative, because then I feel much more free somehow. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. I invite any of you to kind of share your experience and how it's affected your creativity.
Well, yeah, I mentioned, sorry, Clive, were you speaking?
Oh, go for it. No, please, Jeff, for you.
I was mentioning that, I didn't have anyone to play music with. And I think, violin, viola, cello, we're all lucky to play instruments where there's a tremendous amount of rewarding repertoire that is complete for our solo instruments. I felt, I think it would have been a very different experience for me. And I'm guessing for you too, if you didn't have Bach, if I didn't have Bach, it would have been different. I don't know exactly in what way it would have been different, but I know it would have been profoundly different. Yeah. Everybody's got a different story, and everyone has a different reason for doing what they did. I mean, my personal situation is, our family is a single income family with, no university affiliation, no orchestra affiliation. We've got 2 young kids. There's a lot of financial stresses, and a lot of financial commitments, and a lot of, there's a lot of sleepless nights. I mean, I don't think it's irresponsible to plan your life based on not having the world shut down, but it did, and it happened quickly. And there was a lot of thought, certainly in our house, of how is this going to work? Because, I think that there was a lot of misplaced optimism in the beginning. People saying, well, I don't think we're going to play a concert until April. So I'm going to take these weeks to read some books and spend time with my children. It's like, I would love to read books and spend time with my children. And I did spend a lot of time with my children, and that was the greatest thing of it. But there was a part of me that was like, this could go on for a very long time. And there's a part of me that still feels that way. And it's like, does my personal business model for me and my family, does this work? Does this work past September? Does this work past December? Does it work into the next year? And I mean, just not to be a super downer, but I don't know the answer to it. I spent a lot of the spring thinking about the relationship between an artist and an artist's audience, and how one can create a reasonable business model. And I took on this kind of crazy project from my house of producing these programs that I tried to make them as kind of well produced as possible, and to see if I could sort of sell them directly without the intermediary of a presenting organization, because of course presenting organizations have their own priorities and their own needs, and their own relationships with audiences and sponsors. And so in a way, it's been a very interesting time learning about that relationship between the artist and the consumer. I don't have answers yet, but I guess there's a part of me that I worry that the thing that I'm going to regret is, if, of course, what we all want, that we want the world to return back to normal. And there's a part of me that's going to regret not having reset and not having relaxed and not having taken that time. But, if someone had said at any point, okay, things are bad, you've got nothing until September 27th, and then everything's normal, or November 18th, everything's normal. Or even if they said, 2021 season is basically going to be a mess, but 21-22 season, totally fine, back to normal, then I might have honestly just been like, all right, well, I'll see you then, and I'm just going to hang out on the beach with my kids and do a bunch of stuff. But then when I think honestly, I probably wouldn't, because I love doing what I do. And people have said, it has been a nice thing to reflect on the fact that I realize now that I've been one of the lucky ones that's really enjoyed doing what I do. And people say, well, at least you don't have to do this, and at least you don't have to be spending that time in hotels, and at least you don't have to go to all those post-concert dinners. It's like, I like that stuff. I like all of it, and I miss it. Anyway, so how's that for a big downer?
I mean, you put it so well. It's the uncertainty of it that for me is the killer. This is what's really hard.
We always say we're living in gray, and I don't like being in gray.
Mud or whatever. Yeah, and it's exactly as you said. If someone could say, well, 21-22 is going to be as it as it has been, and financial security, having the security of knowing that you're going to play for audiences, which is something which I mean, I knew that I loved, but having it taken away has reaffirmed my love for that. And for most aspects of what we do, I mean, minus airport check-ins with the cello, which I'm sure Clive will appreciate. This I don't miss a single bit, not a single bit. But everything else, I mean, the interaction and the communication that you have with an audience, it's really, it's something that I realize is extremely important to me, and something that I miss very, very much. And so, and also the fact, that my daughter can go to her preschool, that she can go to interact with other kids, that she's going to, that there's a certainty that she's going to have a normal early childhood. Because right now it's great that she has more time with me and Rafael, my husband, than we ever dreamed that she would have, which is fabulous. But now, it's 5 months have gone by and she hasn't been able to have her interaction with other kids, and so this is this is also something that is a worry, and compounded with everything else. And so, which James mentioned, which of course all of us musicians are, we have to work out our own business models, and so it's there's a lot to think about. And so, as to your question as to whether we feel more creative, I mean, for myself, I felt like I went up and down. I had kind of spurts of very intense activity creatively, where I learned some new repertoire. I also I did a project with Solo Bach and all of that, and that was very, it was rewarding, and I was happy that I did it. And then there would just be days that I knew I needed to also, as Yura was saying, just to reset. Mm-hmm. And just say, okay, it's hard to work without the deadline of a performance. That was another kind of reset that we all had to do in our minds, because we're used to practicing for something, and not having the certainty of that was also kind of a mind bender for me.
Yeah. It looks like we have a couple of questions coming in through the chat. Leah, is there anything that you wanted to ask from those? It looks like you're muted. Come on.
You think I would learn that by now? My goodness. So we have a lovely lady, Pamela, is asking, is teaching online a possibility as an additional income stream during this time? And have any of you sort of started teaching more or gone online during this time? Anybody want to take that one? Clive?
Well, yes, is the short answer. I was talking to colleagues. I teach at the Colburn School. I'm incredibly thankful to have that job right now. I mean, I was in a quartet for 15 years, and I remember in 2009, we had to look at our season and think, how are we going to survive? And just to reiterate, I still have many colleagues who are in the chamber music business, and they've had, just entire season has gone, and freelance players in London that play the shows that are now stacking shelves at supermarkets. I'm not exaggerating. So the good thing is we have, in some instances, very good technology that nothing is the same as being in the room. And there are certain particular things that are only really taught in the most direct way when you're in the room with somebody, and you can sense them and hear them in real time, and you can see how they're producing a sound. Or you're the teacher and you're in a hall and you're telling them how they sound in a real acoustic rather than a studio. Those things you can't do online, but there is a lot that you can do. And most of us that have to teach have quickly had to figure out ways of conveying the ideas that we need to express with harnessing the technology that's available. If this had happened 30 years ago, there's an interesting thing that reminded me of this. I read a book when I was in the Tokyo Quartet. I was interested to read a book called Married to the Amadeus. And it was Muriel Nissel, the wife of the second violinist, Sigmund Nissel. And she wrote about her years as his partner while they toured the world. And she said that when a question would come via airmail about repertoire for the next season, the quartet might be in Australia or in America or somewhere, and they'd send an airmail letter, and it would arrive 2 weeks later, and then the other one would get sent back. And that was the speed of communication in 1950. Now, here we are over Zoom. We've all done, right here in La Jolla, we have this magnificent technology and superb top-of-the-range cameras, wonderful ribbon mics, a wonderful sound engineer, videography, you name it. It's all available. And in fact, with the Colburn School, we did a whole gala concert online using only everyday technology, such as an iPhone or an iPad, and put it together with students. And for example, I was part of a performance where we beamed the cello and the piano part of the Brahms clarinet trio to our student in Spain, and then she played with an earbud and played on top of our track. And that was one of the performances. And we had Eric Whittaker with the virtual choir with, I think, 18,000 participants, something like that, all mixed into the final performance. So there is a lot you can do. And students who are, for example, in their final year of high school, who are looking ahead and thinking, what's going to happen next year? I've got auditions, I've got to prepare videos. We adapt, and human beings are very adaptable, and we have technology on our side. It's patently not enough for all the reasons, painful reasons we've just been sharing, but it carries on, and my colleagues have so much to offer. I'm sure if they were to say, hey, I can, like Alisa, she's such a masterful cellist, James, all of you, Yura, if I'm a young player, I've seen you on video, I've seen you in concert, I'd be lining up to take lessons from these wonderful artists. Even if it's just a talk, I'd be sitting there just hanging on every word. And we can do that with technology, and I'm very thankful for that. It's keeping us going as much as we hate Zoom and sitting on our asses for 8 hours a day. Live.
What, Clive?
I was going to say, I mean, I did a series of classes for El Sistema in Venezuela over Zoom, and I did it was like 3-hour classes once a week, and I have so much respect for you. I mean, I always thought the world of you, Clive, but the fact that you can do this for 8 hours a day, this is unbelievable.
I've done it. I did it for 5 months.
Oh my
pretty
God.
Much.
That's really.
Yeah. But I can give you a good idea about the technology. For example, the other night, you had that wonderful concert, James Ehnes and Alisa on Sunday, and I wasn't able to watch it live, but I was able to watch the live stream, and I looked at it and I thought, wow, Alisa starts Opus 69 Beethoven on an up bow, and I love it. In fact, that's the bowing that I've been using most recently. And,
really?
You see it, you make a mental note, you go to the cello. For somebody that may not have, I had a student and I said, try it up bow. It's an upbeat bar. And he came back and he said, most of the other people I played with have said it should be down bow. And then I went all across YouTube and I said, well, here's Miklos Periny, here's so-and-so. And you did the same bowing, which is the bowing I do. So this is something I discovered just through the power of technology, because I couldn't be in the room that night. Different times.
Very different.
Incredible.
I might have told some of you about this. I was doing this online masterclass for an academy out of Vancouver, and one of the students was a violist from Kazakhstan who was playing the exposition only of the Stamitz Viola Concerto. And she came on screen and she played it about 2 minutes and played it absolutely fine. And then her internet connection completely dropped out. And I got the private message in the chat window that said, you have 28 minutes left with her. So that was an interesting challenge. Yeah, well, I talked a bit about the piece. I had no idea whether anything I said, whether she could hear it or whether it would do her any good. So yeah, it was, these things, I mean, it's amazing that they happen at all. Yes. So that is really incredible. But boy, yeah, the teaching online is challenging. And I don't know if this has been something that's been affecting any of you guys, but I find it's hard on the ears. Yeah. Like the sort of the computer speakers and whatnot. It's
especially
also staring at the screen, which is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just, especially after the first class, and then I got a little bit more into the rhythm of it. But after the first one, I was just drained. I was dead. Yeah.
No, it's a phenomenon. We've been told to limit how many consecutive lessons we give over the internet, and
for sure,
I did 9 in one day, and I was just a zombie at the end of it all.
Unbelievable.
My wife just sort of passed me the scotch bottle, and I sort of took an anesthetic and passed out.
Seems like a good way to respond to a day like that.
Oh yeah.
With all of this technology and just all the changes we're going through, do you guys think this is a pivotal moment for the arts? Anyone?
I'd say that there are things that we are learning right now that are going to, the genie doesn't go back in the bottle, so to speak. Like there are things that are happening now that are going to become, I believe, a more integral part of concert life going forward. This is going to sound like such a soundbite, but I do believe it's true that any challenge is also an opportunity. And my children are going to call me right now. Sorry about that. Stop.
Well, my dog was just in the screen, so that's fine. My mother grabbed him. He was getting too hot.
Sorry about that. But to continue, that just I think that there are really incredibly brilliant people that are trying to find paths through this right now, and what the solutions that people will, look at what's happened here at SummerFest, and if I may say, what we did at my festival in Seattle,
Sure.
where we did an online festival as well. And I think that what we've managed to learn from that will benefit the industry in general. And I think there's a great spirit of collaboration right now. Like I don't get the sense, and I certainly hope that you don't get this sense being more on the business side of things, but I don't feel like people are being sort of proprietary or protective of things. They're saying, hey, we're all trying our best, and I tried this and this worked, and it might work for you too. And so hopefully, yeah, in that sense, it will be a positive, pivotal moment in the performing arts. There are undoubtedly lots of ways that the arts will be profoundly affected for many years to come that we can't even recognize now. But I don't think that they all have to be negative. Definitely not.
I think that all of this, just like this event today, will help with this accessibility. I don't think that we'll ever be able to replace live performance, but all of these ancillary activities surrounding the performance, prelude lectures that you can listen to beforehand and then watch the recording afterwards after you've seen the performance, or if you have a dinner planned, you might not be able to make it, but you won't miss it, or young children at home could be watching things. So I think all of this use of Zoom really, and other streaming, really provides this wonderful, sorry, my husband's coming in, sort of umbrella of all these things that we can do to enhance the live concert experience that I hope continues on in the future.
Yes, if I might add to that, this is all makes total sense. I have this book at home called The Glenn Gould Reader, and it was edited by Tim Page, a journalist. And he was very a thoughtful person and changed his whole life. Of course, famously stayed at home, had his own home recording studio, and existed as a musician purely through technology for several decades, gave up performing live concerts. And he said, quite prophetically, although it was overkill, he said, why would you want to go to a Tchaikovsky symphony concert when you can be at home and you can adjust the levels to the way you want them? You can choose the piece you want, when you want to hear it, and thus grew everybody's LP collection. Then we had CDs, we had all the other technology, and now we have phones, we have streaming. And yet, live concerts are, until very recently, were going great guns and doing very, very well. And in fact, we were reaching people that would not have normally wanted to go to a concert through technology. And I think James is right. There are lots of things we don't know yet. But to your point, Leah, I think this is going to help. It's going to be part of our new lifestyle as an artist. And we've got to be, our students and our children are going to grow up being proficient with this technology. I'm like Stone Age man when it comes to technology. I have to have my daughter, who's 23, help dad fix internet and all of that streaming service and whatever. But I think it'll be a mix, and I don't think it's replaceable. I think a live performance, there is something akin to it's a spiritual experience when everybody's in the same space, focusing on the same thing in real time. Mm-hmm. The energy and the emotion of what we share, it's a communal experience. And if you take that away, yeah, it's great, it's novel, but it's not going to cut it. And I have faith that people are going to come back even more hungry and wanting to enjoy that again in a new way.
I've heard this idea of artists as second responders. And I was wondering, maybe Yura, you can touch on this because you've taken a break from playing music. Now that you've returned to it, do you feel like it will have that kind of healing that we maybe all need right now?
I guess I stopped playing, but I never stopped listening to music. And that's probably the way it reconfirms what you said. You know, we are many things. We need to eat, we need to feel, we need to, you know, it's intellectual and physical endeavor, this thing called life. So I guess we, you know, people have been singing before the dawn of time. So it's in our blood. And I'm, you know, we are playing music written everything from yesterday to 300 years ago. And that is very specific in that way, right? Being a classical musician, and that it takes years and years of mastery to be able to do this. So it is a small world in a way, but it can, and I hope it still does reach a large amount of people. And maybe, you know, I guess my biggest lesson for myself is to not judge beforehand what it's going to give me. So sometimes, you know, the most exquisite live experience in the best halls can give you a certain experience. And sometimes listening from a crappy car audio, but, you know, a piece that I really wanted to listen to can give me another emotional experience. So it really, you know, there's no reason to discriminate, and we can all feel something very special from a different circumstance. So, you know, I learn, I don't mean to be that dog mom that talks about dog every day, which I do, but I do learn a lot from seeing my dog, which is, okay, so I met him on April 15th, and he was from second chance program, which means that he would have been euthanized if I didn't adopt him. So, but he was very happy that day, just as happy as he was yesterday. So, you know, in a way, like he was living his life fully, even though he could have been dead a few days later, right? And every morning he wakes up with this like big joy in his face. And of course it's partially because hopefully he doesn't have any idea how the world is coming to an end. But it also means that like every day is a new day and he's gonna enjoy what's in front of him. Like he's so present, right? And maybe that's not a bad thing after all these days, to just, until things come back to normal or then go to new normal, we do what we can to make today count. And right now, this is this. We're able to see each other. We're able to play music that we love. I feel very, very, very fortunate because this is my only chamber music experience of this year after COVID. And I'm relishing every moment of it. Like every note that I'm playing, I find myself like closing my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm the third of the harmony. Like I love doing this. There's, you know, like it's something that I cannot reiterate enough, what a gift it is to be the listener, but also as a player.
I think we all feel that way. We're all relishing this and trying not to take a second of it for granted.
Yeah, like the first note of the Schubert quintet in our rehearsal, mine, you know, to C major triad, I'm the E. And I was just like, oh my God, I can make a minor and it matters in the music. Like my E becomes an E flat and the piece just turned a corner. And I know, if it wasn't for my apparent professionalism, I would have broke down in tears, which I didn't. So it's really special to be here, you guys. And it's, I'm glad you're doing this. I know it's a lot of work for everyone involved. And I know that playing is maybe the easiest part. There's so much that goes in the background, but you know what?
No way. As Allison opened this, we are all intrinsically connected, like as again, that artistic ecosystem. And I think and James mentioned, that transparency and that partnership and not wanting to collaborate, I hope that continues in the future too, because I think in that way it's positively impacted the artistic community, that there's not these invisible walls that exist as much between the artist and the agent and the presenter. And so I hope it's a positive shift for years to come. But and absolutely not. No, we are all just so excited that you are all here. I mean, this has been a void for us. I mean, we live to go to the concerts and see the end result of the work that we do. You know, and we your livelihood. I mean, we have the ability, if our world continues to sort of crumble, we can change industries. I mean, but this music is part of your DNA of who you are, and it's not as easy to pivot. And so I think we feel so protective of the artists and trying to do everything we can to create opportunities like this for you all and for our audience. So no, you do not have the easy job, and we're just as elated that you all are here too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just hearing you say that it was going to bring you to tears, seeing these concerts has been overwhelming for us on the staff as well. And it's just lovely to hear music in the hall again and to see you all. And yeah, I wouldn't have blamed you if you had burst into tears. I don't think anyone would have judged your professionalism if that happened. I think we're all feeling it.
Can you imagine before COVID, like you play a minor third instead of a major third, you go, oh my God. But now I can't imagine such a circumstance.
It's true. Well, we are kind of coming to the end of our time. If there's anyone else, we have a lot of really amazing comments coming through with people just expressing their gratitude to you guys. I don't know if you have the chat open as well, but we're so delighted to have you here. Maybe we can kind of close by just sharing a little bit about what your hopes are for the next 6 months. I mean, I know none of us have a crystal ball, but you know, what are you going to be focusing your energy on and spending your time on during, you know, the upcoming months?
Well, for me personally, I have more time to practice because I'm not going from one city to another. So I hope that you know, ultimately will result in better performance for the audience as well, even better. And my hopes, at least, of course, I have my own hopes, but my general hopes for this our music world is that, I say this with the utmost optimism, but don't, you know, like, I know it's I guess, how do I put this? Music can only give us, music will give us so much, and we will still have to seek it. So I hope that the audience members, from your point of view, you will, you know, in a different way now, it's more of a click than a drive, but you will seek our music making because we're, you know, giving us just as much, even through the screen, you know, that we can't be there for you physically, but I hope that you can still feel our want to connect to you. And I just hope that that doesn't get lost. And I think the reason why I mention it is because I think it's something that needs to be cared for and cultivated. It's not something that is just there, you know? So I hope that all parts of this, you know, music ecosystem, as Leah mentioned, can cultivate this so that it doesn't go away.
Definitely. James, Alisa, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I mean, in terms of hopes, I mean, in the most general sense, we all have the same hopes that people won't get sick and die, and that we'll be able to return to a form of social normalcy. And you know, I'm going to be strangely kind of busy over the next few months, doing a lot of weird stuff. Like, I mean, not weird in any sort of abstract way, but weird in that things that I certainly did not think I would be doing, in some cases even a few days ago. I mean, over the last few days, when I go home from work here at the Conrad, it's like writing emails and talking to people and coming up with things to do. And I guess, obviously, in a personal sense, I hope that they are fun and I hope that they're rewarding. But in a bigger sense, I hope that those of us that are able to be doing things, no matter what those things are, I hope that encourages other people who are maybe feeling a little rudderless or lost, that it will encourage other people, of course, within the realms of being responsible and all that, but to create opportunities of their own, to find ways to engage artistically with their audiences and to challenge themselves. But I'll also say that, for the people out there that are feeling paralyzed and that just don't want to do anything, that's okay too, And here comes my daughter again. So I'll cut off now my mute and let someone else.
Clive, what are your hopes heading forward? Or, sorry, Alisa.
Alisa, go ahead, please.
No, I mean, it's, I feel like I'm a bit tagging on what Yura and James have already expressed so beautifully. But I think this time has really forced us to really take stock of what's truly important to all of us and how we really want to live our lives in the future when, after this passes, and we know that it will pass. And, it's definitely forced me to really think about the kind of repertoire that I want to focus on, to do the kind of concerts that I want to play, the kind of lifestyle that I really want to lead. And I think it's also really made me think in a much more kind of creative and more assertive way in terms of how I'm programming recitals and other projects than I was before. And so I'm quite grateful for that. But again, as James said, I mean, there are times when we all, I think it's inevitable, we're all human beings, where there are days where it's not easy. And, you think, well, I have all this time, so therefore I really should be doing something. And then this can just be very hard to focus. And so like what my therapy was cooking, or just, like I was exercising actually more than I ever have during this pandemic. I was doing kickboxing every single day, and I was, it was really like,
keep my distance.
Yeah, right. But it was very important to me, and it's, it's not over, so it's still important to me. Even though, we see kind of green shoots of activity coming up here and there, depending on where you are. But it's, but yeah, I think it forces all of us to really take stock of what our priorities are. And so when we really are fully back and able to interact and hug each other and, and interact with our audiences, I think, and it's more than a hope, I'm actually quite certain of it. I mean, personally, I think it's going to mean all the more to me to interact and to communicate. And I hope that will come across also in, even music making. So I'm hopeful for that.
Clive, do you want to jump in?
I mean, my friends and colleagues have said it beautifully. I guess the thing that went through my mind a little bit was that, we sometimes take the music that we play, at least I'm speaking for myself, if I can be very candid for a moment, when I was really busy with the Tokyo Quartet, I can't believe I'm confessing this on air, but there would be moments where I would turn up for the 9th concert of the tour, and it was a big program, including maybe a Beethoven quartet. And there were moments when I thought, I'm so tired. I've played this piece a lot. What else can I bring to it? Do I really have the inspiration or the energy to get through it? Do I even like the piece after having played it so many times? And the fact that I do this and get paid to do it for a living, and that somebody could look at me and say, how could you possibly react like that? This music is the greatest gift any human being could have, and to be surrounded and immersed by it, in it, to have it as your profession and to be paid for playing beautiful music. It made me think very deeply about that and how fortunate I am. And I remember Lynn Harrell texted me about a week before he died, and he died very suddenly. And he was talking a lot and giving a lot of classes. And I was asked to give a class at NYU, a Zoom class, and it was to replace him. He'd been asked to talk, and it was early May, and he'd only been gone for a couple of weeks. And I remember playing also the Schubert Quintet with him. And by that point, you know, he was in his early 70s, and music meant so much to him. And as I get older, the music that we play, I feel the same way. They say youth is wasted on the young, but I'm very, very grateful for everything that we still have now. And we are blessed to have, you know, 3 square meals a day, and we're still keeping going, and we have it better than a lot of other people do in other parts of the world. So just a lot to be grateful for, and our beautiful art form will survive, and it has survived centuries. I mean, a whole, you know, generation of instrument makers were wiped out by the bubonic plague, but there were others that followed. Schubert, Mozart, they all died, you know, very young, and they left incredible pieces, and those pieces are still with us. My favorite recording of the Brahms Clarinet Trio was made in 1941 in London, when they were, you know, battening down the hatches, and there was the Blitzkrieg raging. We've always managed the music has always survived, and that says something. We need it. We need the composer. We need the audience, and that triangle, composer, audience, and player, and venue, and being in the same room. I think that will always be there, and it's just, let's hope it comes back sooner rather than later, and that nobody else suffers too much in the meantime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for your resiliency and for the joy that you've brought us, and for being so open. I know that this has been a difficult time for everyone, and sharing your personal stories means so much. And, you know, not just through the music that you play on stage, but through your words today. We really appreciate you being here. So to our audience at home, thank you for being here. I know that you've been enjoying the 7 artists who we have here in La Jolla this SummerFest, and I hope that you'll show your support for the 80 plus that were not able to be here by supporting our LJMS Artist Cares Fund. We care about our artists, and we look forward to welcoming everyone back next summer. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon. See you tonight at the concert. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Alison.